Chapter 1. The Hungry Earth. Garrett Webb awoke with a start, his heart pounding. He wiped away the thin sheen of sweat that covered his forehead as he struggled to regain full awareness. The nightmare that had been tormenting him vanished in a dark puff of dream smoke, leaving him with nothing more than a fading impression of being slowly smothered. The only light came from the glowing red numbers of the small clock perched on the nightstand beside his queen-sized bed. He barely had time to see that it was 4:05 a.m. before they winked out. An instant later, his bed lurched sideways and slammed into the wall. His left shoulder struck the wall at an awkward angle, causing him to cry out in both pain and shock. Instinctively, he reached out for the woman sleeping next to him. "Mel! Mel!" An instant later, his wife Melody cried out as she too was brutally dragged back into consciousness. Her arm flailed out, slapping him hard on his stomach. He was shirtless, and her fingernails scraped along his ribs, leaving 4 thin, bloody scratches. The bed lurched again. "Molly!" she screamed. Of course, her first thought was for their 10-month-old daughter. On cue, Molly started crying. Husband and wife struggled to get out of bed, but suddenly the floor tilted. The bed slid along the wall, away from Molly's bedroom, and stopped under the window that overlooked the lake just outside their petite home. The lake had dried up during the long drought that gripped central Florida, and all that was left was a hard, cracked bed. "Molly!" screamed Melody again. The house answered them with another groan, and suddenly the window shattered. Shards of glass pummeled them. If they had been looking up, they would have been blinded. As it was, they sustained dozens of painful, shallow cuts. "Garrett, what's happening?" Garrett opened his mouth to say that he had no idea, but suddenly a wall of dirt followed the glass. He covered his eyes and mouth and rolled sideways as the dirt piled onto the bed. Melody screamed again. She scrambled off the bed and fell to the floor. Then she began to crawl toward the bedroom door. "Mel, wait! Molly!" Melody's only thought now was for her daughter. In the next bedroom, Molly's cries became screams. The tiny wood frame house shook as dirt continued to pour through the bedroom window. "We're going to die," thought Garrett. For a moment, he was more amazed than afraid. How could a perfectly normal night transform into this kind of insanity? Melody had put Molly down early. He had ordered pizza, and the two of them had eaten while they watched television. Afterward, there had been long, slow lovemaking. Garrett was not due at work until 9 the next morning, and they had stayed up late talking about their plans for their new life. Both had been born and raised in Kentucky, but Gainesville was their home now. They were rapidly falling in love with the Florida city. It had been a plain and simple night, the best kind of night. "No," he spat out the word, along with a mouthful of dirt. "We are not going to die like this." He was 2/3 right. Melody was almost to the door, but it was an uphill climb. She scrambled against the hardwood floor until she reached the door frame. She grabbed it and held tight. Molly's screams were frantic now. Garrett knew that they had seconds to get to her. He crab-crawled across the bed. He was wearing only night shorts, and shards of glass sliced into his hands, knees, and feet. He ignored the stabbing pain and lunged forward, falling to the floor. Something ripped deep inside his calf. He screamed, but kept moving forward. He could see everything, even though the bathroom light at the end of the hall was off. It was the only light they had left on. He wasted a moment to wonder how seeing in the dead of night was possible. Then he glanced up and got his answer. Both ceiling and roof were split down the length of the house. Directly overhead, a full moon shone down, bathing everything in a harsh gray glow. The wooden floor buckled and broke. Dust flew up, and he coughed again. Molly continued to scream, but now that they were almost to the hall, Garrett dared hope that they might be able to save her. Their rented house was small, barely 1,100 square feet, with only 2 bedrooms and a single bath. The bedrooms were within a few feet of each other. Like many older Florida houses, it was built on concrete blocks with no real foundation. "Molly? Mommy's coming, baby!" Melody pushed through the door, and for the first time, Garrett saw the dark stains on the wood beneath her. Like him, she was barely dressed. Panties and a nightgown that came to mid-thigh. The shattered glass had done its work on her lovely legs. The house groaned again. Only this time it was even louder than before. The splintered floor lurched beneath them. To their right, the entire structure fell away. Only jagged wood was left of what used to be a kitchen and a living room. "Garrett, help me!" Melody was almost to Molly's door. Another few feet, and she would be at her crib. He lurched forward, grabbed Melody by the ankles, and pushed her toward his daughter's bedroom. "Come on, come on, come on," he muttered. The stench of shattered wood and plaster stung his nostrils. Tears squirted from his eyes as the pain in his leg multiplied 100-fold. He knew that he was probably doing irreparable damage to the torn muscle, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was getting his wife and daughter out of the house.